The board gave Dominic Reyes 30 days to clean out his office. Or get married. He laughed when they told him. Actually laughed out loud in the middle of the Hargrove Capital conference room with 17 people watching. Then he realized not one of them was laughing back, and the silence went flat and cold in a way that told him everything. The morality clause has been in the partnership agreement since 1987, said Clifton Hargrove, the old man himself, not looking up from the folder on the table. Your father signed it. You signed it twice. I know what I signed. Then you know what this means. Dominic was 38 years old. He had built Hargrove Capital's renewable energy division from a side project that nobody believed in into a $2.4 billion portfolio. He had done it in 6 years, working through a divorce, through his mother's illness, through 18 months of raising his daughter Bea alone, while the nanny situation kept falling apart. He had done all of it, and never once asked for anything. Now they were sitting across from him telling him that 3 photographs, taken by someone with a long lens outside a restaurant in Nashville, had put his personal conduct under review, and that the partnership clause required all senior partners to maintain what the document called a stable domestic household. Define stable, he said. Clifton finally looked up. Married, Dominic. It means married. He drove home in the dark. Bea was already asleep when he got there. He stood in the doorway of her room. For a long time, watching her breathe, her drawings pinned all over the wall above her bed, horses, mostly, and one that he thought might be a dragon. But she had told him very seriously was a dog. She was 7. Her mother had left when Bea was 4 and had since moved to Portland and called on birthdays when she remembered. Dominic sat down on the floor in the hallway outside her room and thought about 30 days. Simone Adler heard about the job on a Thursday morning while she was standing in the parking lot of the elementary school where she taught 3rd grade, eating a granola bar because she hadn't had time for breakfast. Listening to her sister explain the situation in the rapid, slightly breathless way, Priya always talked when she thought Simone was about to say no. It's not what it sounds like, Priya said. It sounds like you want me to pretend to be someone's wife. Temporary arrangement. 30 days, maybe 60. You sign an NDA, you get paid. A lot, Simone. I mean a lot. Enough to clear the loan and then some. The loan, $17,000 she owed their uncle who had covered her mother's hospital bills 18 months ago, and who had never once mentioned it but whose wife mentioned it approximately every time they were in the same room. Simone was a good teacher. She was also broke in the specific grinding way that people who do important work for not enough money are broke, where there's always just enough, and never any more than that. Who is he? She said. His name is Dominic Reyes. He runs the investment side of Hargrove Capital. He's rich very, and he needs a fake wife because his company has an old morality clause and he's about to lose his partnership and with it the division he built, which would affect about 60 employees, most of whom have been with him for years. Simone looked at her granola bar. That's very conveniently sympathetic framing, Priya. I know, but it's also true. She said she'd think about it. Then she drove to school and taught long division for 6 hours. And after the last bell, sat at her desk looking at the number. Priya had texted her, which was more money than she made in 8 months, and called back. They met in the lobby of a building downtown, not his office, neutral ground. His lawyer was there. Her sister was there, which Simone had not agreed to, but also didn't have the energy to object to. There was a contract. There were terms. Simone read every word of it, which she could tell surprised him. Dominic Reyes was not what she expected. She had built a picture in her mind on the drive over, some version of the men she remembered from her one disastrous year working in Chicago after college, men who wore their money the way some people wore cologne. Too much you could smell it before you saw them. He wasn't that. He was tired, mostly. Well-dressed, but the kind of well-dressed that was automatic. Like he'd stopped thinking about it. He had the particular face of someone who had been managing something difficult for a long time, without talking about it, jaw slightly set, eyes a little too focused. He also looked at her the way almost no one looked at her in professional settings. which was like she was a person who might have thoughts worth considering. She noticed it and filed it away. "There's one thing not in the contract," he said when she was almost done reading. She looked up. "My daughter, Bia. She's 7. He paused. "She knows this isn't real. I won't lie to her. But she'll be present, and I need you to." He seemed to be choosing words carefully. "I need you to be kind to her, that's all. I don't need you to be her mother or her friend or anything she doesn't want. Just kind." Simone put the contract down. "How long has she known you were doing this?" 3 days. "What did she say?" Something shifted in his expression. He almost smiled. "She asked if you liked horses." Simone signed the contract. The arrangement was straightforward. She would move into the guest suite in his house in Birchwood. They would attend 2 events together in the first week. A firm dinner and a charity gala that 3 of the senior partners would also be attending. She would be introduced as his fiancée. After 30 days, if the board was satisfied, the clause review would be dropped. After 60 days they would quietly announce that the engagement had ended, and Simone would return to her apartment and her granola bars and her 3rd graders. The first night was strange in the way that new living situations are always strange. Sounds she didn't know, light in different places, the architecture of someone else's life, laid out around her. His house was nice without being cold. There were B's drawings on the refrigerator. There were running shoes by the back door, and a coffee maker that looked like it cost more than her car, and a stack of paperback novels on the kitchen counter that surprised her. She read The Spines. He had decent taste. Bia appeared at 6:45 in the morning on her first full day there, in pajamas with cartoon foxes on them, and stood in the kitchen doorway studying Simone with the serious, uncensored appraisal that only small children and cats can get away with. "Dad said you're a teacher," Bia said finally. "3rd grade. I'm in 2nd. B considered this. "Do you like horses?" "I don't know very much about them," Simone said honestly. "But I'd like to." That seemed to be the right answer. Bia came into the kitchen and got herself a bowl of cereal, and they sat at the counter together in companionable quiet. And Dominic came downstairs 20 minutes later to find them looking at pictures of Appaloosas on B's tablet and arguing gently about whether the spotted ones or the solid ones were better. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs and didn't say anything for a moment. "Appaloosa," Simone said, not looking up. Crouched. "Final answer." "You're wrong," Bia said. "Noted." Dominic made coffee and didn't say anything, but the set of his shoulders, which had been up near his ears since she'd met him, dropped about half an inch. The firm dinner was a test, and they both knew it. Hargrove Capital's senior partners were not people who missed things. Clifton Hargrove had built his reputation on reading people across a table, and the 3 other partners who would be present, Dunmore, Vashti, and the one everyone called Rec, because his actual name was too long, were all sharp in the specific way that people who have protected large amounts of money for a long time are sharp. Simone wore a dark green dress that was the nicest thing she owned, and tried not to think about the fact that Ba had solemnly told her she looked like a mermaid, which she had decided to take as a compliment. She sat next to Dominic at dinner, and they talked the way people talk who are performing comfort with each other. The conversation they'd practiced, the background details they'd agreed on, the story of how they met, which was plausible and simple, and not so elaborate it would invite follow-up questions. She mentioned the school, and he mentioned Bia, and the way he said B's name was not performed. That part was real, and everyone could feel it. Afterward, in the car, he said, "You were good in there. You sound surprised." "I'm not. I mean," he stopped. "I suppose I didn't know what to expect. You thought I'd panic." He glanced sideways at her. "I thought it might be more uncomfortable." "I've had uncomfortable parent-teacher conferences," she said. "Grown men who manage $100 million accounts are not actually scarier than a father who's convinced his kid is being unfairly graded." He laughed. It was a real laugh, not the polished professional version. It lasted about 2 seconds, and then he seemed to remember himself, but she'd already heard it. The problem, and there was always a problem, she would think later, in the way that life has a way of complicating things you've tried to keep simple. Arrived in the form of a man named Theodore Vance. Vance was Hargrove Capital's head of institutional accounts, which meant he was one rung below the senior partners and had been for 11 years, which was 9 years longer than he'd expected when he took the position. He was the kind of man who had been accumulating small grievances for so long they had calcified into something harder. And the thing he had been most aggrieved about for the past 4 years was Dominic Reyes and the renewable energy division that kept getting the attention and the capital and the profile that Vance believed, down to his bones, should have been his. The photographs taken outside the Nashville restaurant. Vance had hired the photographer. The memo that had triggered the morality clause review. Vance had written it. Simone didn't know any of this. Neither did Dominic, not yet. What she did know was that Vance, at the charity gala 2 weeks into the arrangement, spent 40 minutes talking to her in a way that felt like an interview she hadn't agreed to, asking questions that seemed casual but weren't, steering the conversation in small circles around things she and Dominic had and hadn't said at the firm dinner, looking for gaps. She didn't give him any gaps, but she drove home quieter than usual. He was checking our story, she told Dominic, when Bay was in bed. He set down his drink. What did he ask? She walked him through it. She watched his expression go through something, not surprise exactly, but recognition, the kind that meant he'd had a suspicion he hadn't wanted to confirm. How long have you known it was him? She said. A pause. I didn't know. I suspected. That's not the same thing. No. He looked at the glass in his hand. He's been trying to push me out for years. I kept thinking if I just kept building the division, kept delivering, it would be enough. That it would speak for itself. Simone thought about $17,000 and a granola bar in a parking lot and the particular exhaustion of doing good work in a system that wasn't designed to reward it. It never just speaks for itself, she said. You have to make them hear it. He looked at her then, the full look, not the sideways assessing glance she'd gotten used to from him. What would you do? He said. She thought about it for a moment. I'd find out what he did and I'd document it, all of it. Every step. And then I'd walk into that conference room with a folder twice as thick as the one they used on you. He did find it. It took 11 days and required a conversation with his former assistant and a very careful re-examination of some records and a late night with a forensic accountant who owed him a favor from 2019. What he found was not just the photographs in the memo. It was a pattern going back 4 years. Vance had redirected 2 institutional accounts away from the renewable division during a critical growth period. He had suppressed a risk analysis report that would have gotten the division additional capital. He had, most damningly, been in contact with a competitor firm, quietly, carefully, but not carefully enough. Dominic sat with all of it spread across his dining room table at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and he was still sitting there at midnight when Simone came downstairs in her bathrobe. Because she'd heard him moving around and had a sixth sense, developed over years of classroom management, for when someone was in the kind of trouble that needed company. She sat down across from him. She looked at the documents for a long time without touching them. That's it, she said. That's it. Does it bother you that you have to do it this way? He thought about that honestly, which she appreciated. Yes, he said. I'd have rather never needed to, but he made the choice, 4 years of choices. He looked up. Does that seem like I'm rationalizing? No, she said. It seems like you're being fair to yourself, which is different from being fair to him. They sat there for a while in the specific quiet of a house where a child is asleep upstairs, which is a different quiet than any other kind, heavier with responsibility, warmer for it. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. Why did you really say yes to this? Priya said the money, but... He paused. You don't strike me as someone who does things purely for the money. She was quiet for a moment. My mom got sick 1.5 years ago. My uncle covered the bills. He's never made it a burden, not once. But his wife has, every time she sees me, just small things, the way people do, comments about choices and priorities and whether I should be teaching. She straightened one of the documents that didn't need straightening. I wanted to be done owing. I wanted to just be done with it. He nodded slowly. The carrying is heavier than the debt, he said. Yes, she looked at him. Exactly that. The morning Dominic walked into Clifton Hargrove's office. With the folder, Simone was teaching her class long division. She didn't hear from him until 2 in the afternoon, a single text that said, "It's done." She read it between reading groups and felt something release in her chest that she hadn't fully realized was tight. She heard the full story that evening. He had laid everything out. The photographs, the memo, the suppressed report, the redirected accounts, the competitor contact. He'd been calm about it, which she imagined was the most devastating part for Vance, who had probably expected something he could use. Clifton Hargrove had asked for a recess. By 4 o'clock, Vance had been escorted from the building. The morality clause review was dropped the same day. Dominic told her all of this standing in the kitchen, still in his suit, while Bea sat at the counter drawing horses and listening in the way children listen when they're pretending not to. When he got to the part where Hargrove had said the review was closed, Bea said, without looking up, "Good. Dad's good at his job." Neither of them said anything for a moment. "Thanks, Bug," Dominic said finally. "I know," Bea said. The 60 days ended on a Thursday. Simone packed her things the previous Wednesday night, methodical and efficient the way she did everything. She packed the green dress last. She had a plan. Go home, pay back the loan, sleep for about 12 hours, and return to her regular life, which was real and good, even when it was hard. Bea knocked on the guest room door while she was packing. "You're leaving tomorrow," Bea said. It wasn't a question. "I am." Bea came in and sat on the end of the bed and watched her fold things. After a while she said, "Did you know that Appaloosas are one of the oldest breeds? The Nez Perce people bred them. That's why they're special." "I didn't know that," Simone said. "I looked it up. Because you said you wanted to learn." Bea looked at her hands. "You actually wanted to learn. Most people just say it." Simone stopped folding. She sat down next to Bea on the end of the bed. "You're going to be fine," she said. "You already are. You know that, right?" Bea leaned against her shoulder. Just briefly, the way kids do when they're trying not to make something bigger than it is and failing just a little. She was home by noon on Thursday. The apartment smelled like the candle she'd left burning too long before the arrangement started. She unpacked and paid the loan online and ate leftover pasta standing over the sink, and told herself this was exactly what she'd wanted. At 7 o'clock, her phone rang. Unknown number, which she almost didn't pick up, but something made her. "It's Dominic." "I know, I just didn't have your number saved." A brief silence. "That seems like an oversight on my part." "It was a business arrangement." "Was." He said it carefully, like he was testing the tense. "Bea is upset," he said. "Not, she's fine, she's not." He stopped. "She's been in her room all evening drawing what I'm fairly certain is a horse funeral." Simone closed her eyes and pressed her fingers against them for a moment. Dominic. "I know. You can't call me because your daughter is sad." "I know," he said again. Then, "What if I'm calling because I am?" The pasta went cold on the counter. Outside her window, the city was doing its ordinary Thursday evening things. Headlights and bus brakes. And someone's music through the wall. "That's not a business arrangement talking," she said. "No," he said. "It's not." She looked at her apartment. Her regular life, real and good. Her bookshelves, and her lesson plans, and her granola bars, and $17,000 worth of freedom newly paid for, and somehow still the particular shape of kitchen she'd only lived in for 60 days that had started to feel more like home than this place did. "The next time you take me to one of those dinners," she said slowly, "I want to know who everyone is beforehand, the full background. I spent that first dinner knowing less than everyone else in the room, and I don't like that feeling." He was quiet for a second. "That sounds like a condition." "It is. I can do that, and I want to know what happened with the geothermal projects, the renewable division, all of it. If I'm going to be present in your professional life, I want to actually understand what you do. You want the full picture." "I always want the full picture." Another pause. Longer this time, but not uncomfortable. The kind of pause that is actually someone smiling. "I'll make dinner on Saturday," he said. "B will want to show you something she found about Nez Perce horsemanship. I should warn you, it's very detailed." "I'll bring the granola bars," Simone said, "in case it runs long." He laughed again, the real one, 2 seconds, nothing polished about it. She was already looking up the transit route to Birchwood when they hung up. 3 weeks later, B drew a picture that she taped to the refrigerator without saying anything about it. It was 4 figures, a tall man, a medium woman, a small girl, and, after some discussion about artistic intent, a horse. Underneath, in the careful, oversized letters of a second grader who had almost finished her year, she had written, U.S. Dominic saw it first. He stood in front of the refrigerator for a long moment, coffee getting cold in his hand, and didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Some things are already complete before you find the words for them, and this was one of those.